Hello wonderful cult enjoyers, Splendid here. Sorry it's been so long, I've had a kind of crazy year. Been doing a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. But mostly stuff like this.
Brother,
Anyways folks, let's talk company heroes. After the multiple free weekends and sales COH3 has experienced over the last year, something has occurred to me that's been eating me away a wee bit. I'd like to talk about a problem I think COH has always suffered from, but is more relevant here in COH3 than it ever has been before. This is of course player retention. Even after the multiple sales, free weekends, the player base has remained basically the same, which only leaves one question. Why?
Why?
I think a big part of this, a particular problem, is the transition from single player to multiplayer for new players. I love COH. They are my favorite games. I think about COH when I'm not thinking about COH. But for the purpose of this video, we have to put ourselves in the new, fresh, shiny, newbie boots of someone who's experiencing company heroes for the first time. The COH franchise offers a fantastic, competitive, interactive, somewhat arcadey but complex World War II RTS experience that few franchises manage to capture. But it's very hard for new people to pick up and play. You know, it's not like Call of Duty where you can just drop into a game, shoot some guys, promote, get the word guitar solo, call in an airstrike, and get that sort of instant dopamine hit. In Company of Heroes, we have to learn. And we have to dedicate time spent learning, work towards building the fundamentals over a certain period of time, of which will be longer for some people than others, you know, people less experienced in RTS. I think for most players who've been playing Company for a long time, the path they may have taken might look something like this. Campaign, cooperative,
I don't need friends, they disappoint me.
scrims with friends, then multiplayer. When you played your first Company of Heroes game, you probably played through the campaign.
Taking heavy fire!
Probably completed it, maybe played some DLCs too, did some theater of war missions with your friends, some co-op versus AI, built like 10 mortars because you thought they were OP.
Why?
Maybe you did some scrims against your friends, got a feel of what it's like fighting a human being with a brain, then boom, you're good to go for multiplayer, right? Right? Except no one told you about timings, learning the maps, playing all the factions and gaining an understanding of what unit comes out and when, the health of models, where to build cover, the angle of the sandbags, where to wire, the buildings to exploit, light vehicle timings, the importance of vision, what the power spike is for your faction, when is it supposed to happen, the time to tech versus the time to build, rounded army compositions, meta strats and commanders, the fucking tactical map, the damage profile of each weapon type and the optimal range each unit should fight at, key bindings, mine placement, resource management, attack ground through smoke, reverse and kiting, optimal building placement, the point blank mechanic, precision micro 15 units, which flat surfaces are negative cover, light cover interactions with explosives, not upgrading every penal with PTRS, attack move, hearing in the fog of war and shift clicking, etc, etc, etc. And this is just really scratching the surface of what it means to be semi-competitive in Company of Heroes. As much as I love Company of Heroes, the learning curve for these new guys is steep and then some. If you look through the COH3 Steam reviews lately, you're going to find a lot of like older players who are changing their review from a negative one to a positive one, and you're going to see a lot of new players who are sort of like review bombing the game after only playing it for like a couple of hours. And if you're seeing these reviews, you might think something along the lines of, who are these people to review bomb my game? They've only played it for like 2 hours on like a free weekend or gotten the sale. My friends and I have played it for a long time. We've suffered through the launch. We love it, blah, 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 blah. However, we have to think, what part of Company Heroes 3 are these guys actually playing? Let's go back to the Company Heroes learning ladder. These new guys aren't in your hard fought for multiplayer experience. These dudes are playing the campaign, learning that engineers can cut wire and that mortars counter machine guns. However, can you think of a worse campaign in COH history for them to be playing? It's objectively the worst campaign we've ever had. It's arguably a steaming bowl of dog water soup. At least in previous installments, COH delivered in the single player front, making the transition a bit smoother between single player and multiplayer. If the single player is the first thing a new player interacts with and it underperforms, a player might not feel the magical co-inclination to play multiplayer in the first place, never mind taking all the time they need to learn everything. And speaking of reviews, finally, after like a year and change, I finally written a positive one for COH3. I know. You're welcome, John. Anyways, can you really blame them for not taking a shine to COH3? You might be thinking, hey, Splendid, just don't play the campaign. As co-veterans, we have this sort of luxury of just skipping the campaign altogether because we already know the fundamentals and the more advanced tactics and mechanics. We already have an understanding of how the game works. How to angle our sandbags, where to place our mines, when to tech and when to build, etc, etc. If you drop one of these new guys in a multiplayer game in COH3, they're going to be playing, let's just face it, a very small but cool group of dudes who've been playing COH for a long time. They don't stand a chance. I might feel a wee bit overwhelmed. Not exactly the most welcoming experience to a new person in the community. And that's what we want, right? We want new people coming to the game and seeing COH for what it really is. A hugely rewarding multiplayer World War II experience. But how do we get them there? How do we make COH multiplayer accessible for these people within the game itself? It's really easy to say something like, oh, go watch some Tightrope or some Daniel D streams and learn the game that way.
Whenever you can, so that you have units on both wings of the MG spotting for it.
And we're lucky to have a community that provides that option, but the game itself should offer new players the means to learn both basic and advanced mechanics without being reliant on YouTube or Twitch and its content creators. You might be saying something like, but Splendid, it depends on the player. They might be coming from an RTS background and the mechanics might come more naturally to them. Well, I hear you, fearless COH enjoyer. I've been thinking about that too. I think it really depends on which game you're coming from, right? If you've been playing conventional RTS games like Command & Conquer, Stronghold, PA, I don't think your skills are going to transfer well because the way units interact with each other in COH are completely different. In more sort of traditional or conventional RTS games, units deal a set damage value and they remove said damage from the enemy's health pool whilst the enemy unit does the exact same thing to your unit, right? There's no chance for the projectiles to miss, or there's no cover for your units to take. The weapon profiles don't change depending on your distance to the enemy or change depending on the damage profile of your small arms. There are no penetration values or bounce chances depending on pen or distance. What I'm saying is it's a different kettle of fish. Even things that are similar, like the veterancy mechanic. The veterancy mechanic in COH is arguably more important than it is in its equivalent to, like, I don't know, C&C, for example, because the units have more value and represent a more important part of your army composition. They have more of a purpose. To put it in sort of grand YouTuber over simplistic terms, it's more micro intensive than macro intensive compared to previous sort of standard RTS experience, right? So I suppose the question I'm asking is, if the free weekends have been and gone, and the gamers of today had an opportunity to play and become invested, why didn't they? Why is the player base the same size it was months ago? And what do we do now?
Captain Cutting, tell the General he now has come.
One, two, three, four.